of the South Asia, and Forum Asia is the human rights organizations based in Bangkok, working in Asia. And then this is the third in the series. We are organizing in different themes in the different series. So today we are going to discuss on the COVID-19 pandemic, debt, that is the international debt or the domestic debt, whatever in a form of the debt, and then inequality. The whole we want to bring the point today's discussion is that how the in the context of the COVID, the debt as a whole, either that be international debt or the domestic debt or the household debt, that will be the exacerbating the inequality that we already have in our society. This is the one that we wanted to discuss this. And then another one is that in the context, how the international politics of this, the financing loan in a form of in the different kind of the mechanism that is happening, and how that will, whether that will help or make a more distress to the people, to the community, to the nation states, those who are receiving the aid in the form of the loan or in the form of the different foreign direct investments, etc. That is the second point. And third one is that what actions or the strategies that nation state in South Asia, maybe globally as well, and then in South Asia specifically, the nation state will should take the strategy to reduce the whole burden of the international domestic or household debt, or cancel the debt, and then what financing mechanism that the South Asian government should in place. And then along with that, what civil society's role we would like to see ourselves as a civil society actors to promote in this very critical juncture of the time, okay, where the financial crunching, resource crunching, one of the disaster impact of the COVID-19, and then the policies, and then program of the government and international financial institutions. So there are the three questions: what is happening, and then what the government, and then in the world, in the South Asia, and then also what actions or strategies should the government of the nation state should take, as well as what campaign or strategies that civil society should take. And then in between, let me inform you that recently, 2 days back, about 150 civil society organizations issued a statement on the debt cancellations. A large participation, a huge participation of the South Asian organizations is a very encouraging one. And then the appeal is going being circulated as a kind of the endorsement, and that will also be a background or basis that we come together in future. Okay, that is the first what is called steps that civil society we have call for actions against the debt, democratization of the financing system. Okay, so these are some background that I wanted to I wanted to flag out. With this, we have now 6 speakers, 3 men and 3 women. All are required. Okay. So and then 50-50. We take one strategy today that the 50-50. And then we have we have Mustafa Talpur. He's the ASMAM, the campaign lead, South Asia campaign lead. ASMAM is doing a global campaign on the inequality and debt cancellation. And then Mustafa is taking the responsibility of mobilizing the Asia on that, the inequality campaign That is the part of this, the debt cancellation or the debt politics is the part of that, the inequality campaigns. Okay. So Mustafa, he's also, he has written a number of books in the past few years on in the inequality development politics and the inequality. And he has also worked with many international organizations before. So we have the Mustafa, and then we have Zulaika Rafiq from Afghanistan. Mustafa, by the way, Mustafa is based in Islamabad, Pakistan. And we have Zulaika Rafiq. She is from Afghanistan, and she is women and children rights activist for the last many years. And then she is also creative writer and laureate. What is called the literacy? She loves being the literary work. Okay, so she is the fantastic friends with us from Afghanistan today. And then we have Amali Wede Gedera from Sri Lanka. She is also doing she has a vast level of experience on the household debt. Okay, the politics of the household debt, particularly of the Sri Lanka. So we have Amali with us, and then we have Sushovandhar. He's a trade union activist from India, based in Kolkata. And then he's also International Council member of the Committee on the Abolition of the Third World Debt. Okay. And then also he's the South Asia lead on that, the abolition of the Third World Debt campaign. And then he's also has a many active, what is called critical intellectuals of India. And then we have Nalini Ratnaraja. She is from Sri Lanka, and she's also a women rights activist, and she's working now Search for Common Ground as a senior program manager. And she has a lot of experiences on how the whole international instrument of the financial instrument has have marginalized the women and marginalized the powerless community. Okay. And then we have finally we have Tofazel Hussain Monju from Bangladesh. He is based in Dhaka, and he has also experience working with the children and women rights. So with this background, I would like to set some norms. Every speaker will get 10 minutes. After 8 minutes, I will appear in the video. After you start to speak, I will disable my quit my video, and at 8 minutes I will come back, and then if you see me, you understand that you will have only 10 minutes. Okay, and then everybody will go in that way, and then after that we will have the time 30 minutes to 45 minutes to have the discussion, to receive the feedbacks from all the participants, from the friends. So maybe 50-50, we will allocate the presentation and the discussions, okay, overall time. So now I would like to start from Mustafa. If you are prepared to give a whole global picture and then what is being happening towards the debt issue, and then also the whole social movements. Mustafa, okay, the microphone is over to you.
Thank you, Netra, and thanks for SAPE and Forum Asia for organizing this very timely discussion on the debt and inequality during this COVID crisis. I have prepared a few slides. I will try to finish in 10 minutes. So just basically give you some background on South Asia, where we stand on inequality, and with public services and the link between debt, public services, and inequality, and what is happening on the debt around the world. So I will try to share my screen. Share.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. So as Netra mentioned, last year we had this about 8 academics from Asia to come together to work on inequality, a book that we compiled. So this is a figure from there. If you see in last 20 years, the inequality is mainly income inequality, measured in a Gini coefficient. If you look at the South Asian countries in 20 years, Bangladesh, India rural, urban, and Pakistan, it has gone up. With a variance, like it went up in India, overall India, it went up in 4.2%, but more difference in urban rural India. It went up in Bangladesh 4.8%, but some countries were able to reduce, like Nepal, Bhutan, and Maldives in South Asia were able to reduce. But in overall picture, the South Asia among the, I would say, I mean, leave the Africa on one side, but it's one of the notorious sub-region. If you take on wealth inequality, if you take income concentration, if you see any human development indicator, if you see gender balance or violence against women, South Asia is actually, if you negatively mark it, it's a number one in all these sustainable development paths that we say. So that's a major issue of disparity in the South Asia, when this that was already experiencing when this crisis hit. Now this is not an strange phenomena. If you look the public sector expenditure, the sector that are critical to reduce inequality are public expenditure on education, health, and social protection. So these are called the sectors that are having a neutralization effect on disparity and creating a more equal societies. I put South Asian countries and I put few other Asian countries along with some Asian countries that were previously part of the Soviet Union, and then some OECD countries. And you can easily compare that the public sector expenditure on health. So this is part of the national budget, not the GDP. It's very lower in South Asian countries. I mean, its maximum in Sri Lanka and Bhutan is about over 7%, and the other countries are less than 4-5% of their total national budget on the health. While if you look the old USSR countries, I'm talking about these because they have a history of social spending under the communist era. Their expenditure both on health and social protection. If you look Uzbekistan and Kyrgyz Republic, that's also important to bring in this point, because these countries are also not rich countries if we measure by GDP per capita or their economic value, but they spend more on social protection. So Kyrgyz Republic spends more than 1/4 of their total budget on social protection, and similarly Uzbek. But the rich countries, you see Belgium and Denmark at the bottom of this table, they spend about 37-43% of their national budget on just social protection, and 14-15 to 16% on their national budget on the health. So their health system and social protection system of these countries were strong before the even COVID hit, to have a system has a resilience actually. But in all South Asian countries, I'll just go to the next slide. Yeah, so as I already mentioned, so the social spending on these three sectors have a strong impact. I mean, 2 years ago, we did this paper on commitment to reducing inequality index, and we referred a research that was conducted in 13 countries, and they found out that the 69% of the overall inequality reduction in these 13 countries was due to the investment in these three sectors. So the countries that were able to reduce their inequality score overall, the Gini index, almost 70% was due to their improvement or investment in these three sectors. And because this spending is always progressive, there are other means to control inequality, but spending is the most important progressive mean to spend that. And yet we see that this is very lower in South Asia. And the one important element that we refer to is these sectors. So education and health really help in reducing or lowering the woman's care work burden. So if there are better hospitals, if there are better schools, if there is a water, the tap at near to the house, if there is a energy easily available, then the domestic labor that women do to taking care of child, of sick people, of finding water and fetching firewood is really reduced. So that helps into achieving the overall objective of gender inequality as well. So having said that, the governments in South Asia were already investing less in education, in health and social protection. There were high level of inequality that has been exacerbated or will be exacerbated by the COVID impact. Where do the debt then come in there? And where are we with the debt? So this is the table that I picked up from so this is the latest figure that is available by 2018 from the World Bank database. So the red one column shows how much by the end of 2018 the country has total external debt stock, and this is million US dollars. It's a million. And the last column purple shows how much countries were repaying actually both interest payments and the principal on 2018. I know in 2020 this figure might be high, as I calculated in Pakistan, because Pakistan's repayment here is very less. It's about 5 billion. But Pakistan in these 3 quarters of this fiscal year has paid over $10 billion, and they will have to pay more. So roughly Pakistan's repayment in this fiscal year is $13 billion. So there are 2 countries that are highly in trouble in South Asia for the repayment. One is Sri Lanka, other is Pakistan. And the leaders of both these countries have been very vocal on debt cancellation from the very first day when this started. So this is the level of the debt. I think given the size of the economy, I'm not expert on Indian economy, but India will also paid about $60 billion in 2018, and this might be more in this year. So this is a quite high level. There is a data from 2010 to 18. I didn't produce that how that debt has been increasing, but that has a steep rise from 10 to 2018. So it has been increasing up. So why that debt matters during this COVID in this crisis? Is the debt? So as I already said, poverty and inequality are already high in South Asia, and with all other, so it's not only income inequality, but if you take education, if you take health, in all respects, there is a high inequality in poverty in South Asia, including hunger and malnutrition and stunting in children. And in last 2.5 months, there are plenty of evidence. World Bank South Asia report, Southeast Asia report, they are calling that there will be more people falling into the poverty. Historically, these countries have not invested much in social protection and in health systems. So their people and the social institutions are not really resilient to withstand with this a very big shock, both health shock and their income loss shock. And then there is a huge effect lockdown, due to the lockdown on workers, their income, livelihood, including the food. We have seen we all know it in our countries. So there's no need to talk there how people were thrown out of the work not even paying the wages. People are walking long hours to reach their homes, and there is still no hope for them to get. There was somewhere here and there cash distribution, but that didn't reach all the people because there was no system. So the countries who historically have a social protection mechanism, they really have a good system. They enlist people, they know who the poor people are and to reach them. But because most of the countries, except I would say because India had this unemployment guarantee scheme and people, and also you see the table previous, India's spending of the budget on social protection is much higher than the other countries. But I don't know how efficient that system really works, but many other countries really don't have the system. So they couldn't really reach out to the actual people. And there is a prediction for next 2 to 3 years, lower economic growth. Lower economic growth means lower job creation, less tax revenue mobilization. So countries will have less actually resources on their disposal to invest in these services that we are talking about. So there is a mounting pressure on governments to increase spending on two fronts. One, to strengthen the health systems in this emergency to protect people from the disease and pandemic, and increase social spending to provide people minimum income so they can buy the food and survive. And then thirdly, to support small businesses who employ large number of people and mainly women. So the informal business, small businesses, vendors, street vendors, these have been completely disrupted and they might not have a running capital to really restart that business. So on these three fronts, government need more revenue, while there is a less now options to mobilize the domestic revenue because due to the slowdown of economic growth, and also the fiscal measures that government has announced to giving a tax relief to some areas, to some industries to reopen to do. So there will be more money. So where the money is going to come from? So that is the whole point actually for the debt cancellation campaign, and people started. So as I already said, there's a too much debt that these South Asian poor countries will be paying this year than to support their people at this very critical time. So that is immoral asking poor countries to leave their people to die either in hunger or in a disease while paying the rich donors, the banks, the bondholders this time of the money. That needs really a global solidarity. People have to come forward, the multilateral, bilaterals, and private credit to say. So the first call that the global debt campaign was complete debt cancellation, the debt that's payable in 2020. I mean, I put here 20 because that was started, but it's a 20 or 21. What people were calling actually for the year one. So the 0 year, the date that's due to be payable has to be permanently cancelled, not postponed, because it shouldn't accrue in the next year. It will again add up to the burden of the debt, and countries are not able to pay as there won't be much money. So that was the first demand, to generate more revenue. So the countries have more money to spend on this. Other demand or key ask was, if that money is not sufficient to help people in this difficult time, the debt payment, then the lenders have to give a debt, but on a consensual lending basis, not too high interest rates, not too much conditions to meet the critical expenditures. And the third demand was, so this is my last slide, Netra. So the third demand was to issue what is called an special drawing rights. So this is the special drawing rights to the countries in different currencies, and this is much cheaper than the debt, because this is, so if for example Nepal has been issued a special drawing right in yen, for example, in Japanese currency, which means then Nepal has to pay the interest rate. What is the interest rate on yen actually in the Japan, or in the euro? So what is the interest rate to pay on euro? Because in these currencies, in their countries, the interest rates are very lower. It's 0.5% or even less than that, or 1%. So these are the special drawing rights. So where are we now? So there were these calls. G20 met about a month ago, and they decided to give. They just decided a date postponement, not cancellation. So the date that is due till December 2020 will be postponed, and the only date that is owed to the bilateral donors, means G20 members, not the multilaterals and not the private date. So bilateral date is very less in the overall date of the country. So the demand is still there that all type of date should be permanently cancelled. So that's main one ask. Uh, the other ask is to the consensual lending. There is some lending. IMF gave some money to Pakistan and some other places, but they haven't come back. The third important element is at the start of the crisis, World Bank, IMF were very vocal for the date cancellation, but both these institutions have not really come forward. They haven't canceled their date. They haven't postponed their date. And I heard that there is a politics behind it. The politics is that the US wants bilateral debt to be cancelled because they think most of the Chinese debt is bilateral debt. So they want to actually fight with China and bleed China to give them the loss. And they think if they come back to the multilateral, that is most of the European and American money to cancel. So it's a fight between donors actually, but people are suffering in the poor countries. And the third one is still the special drawing rights. So, and they didn't talk about Asian Development Bank and AIIB in Asia. So I think we can also add that. And this global debt campaign did not hide the household debt or microfinance debt kind of stuff. And I heard in Cambodia, for example, they have a 9 billion microfinance debt on the private and the household. So that's also causing another issue that might be a bigger issue in South Asia as well than the external debt. So this is the brief background why I need a date cancellation where we are and why we need to push that further. So I will stop here, Netra.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you close this screen share so that I can thank you, Mustafa. It is great. It is great, and then thank you for your brilliant presentations, and maybe very interesting as well. And then maybe our friends will have some queries or some they want to make some intervention later on after this presentation. Now I would like to invite Zulaika Rafiq from Afghanistan. And as I already said, introduced her that she's the women rights activist, writers, and then long time the civil society actors in Afghanistan. Zulaika, we would like to hear from you what is going on in Afghanistan in terms of the financing and development, all the debts, etc. Over to you, Zulaika, now. Zulaika, you are. Can you please unmute? Unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
I forgot. Thank you to Mustafa for providing such a informative presentation. I got to learn a lot about what the debt situation is in the region and its comparison to the rest of the socialist countries and the other more developed countries in Europe. As you all know, I'm not an economist. I'm merely a civil society person, and observations will be from a layman perspective. Like the other countries in South Asia, Afghanistan has also been badly hit by the COVID-19, and cases are on a rapid rise in these weeks, in the current weeks. And like in other countries around us, we have also been hit Our economy has also been very severely. We were on almost complete lockdown for more than 2 months, where almost all businesses, except for except for food and groceries, and those shops were open, and all other businesses, everything was closed down, and it has affected employment and affected other like small businesses. We have a lot of like a large majority of Afghans are working in the informal sector, so almost all of them were suffering, and that has in the context of Afghanistan, where we are already a country of conflict, and we are a country which is very heavily dependent on foreign assistance. I read some time ago that 75% of our budget or more is dependent on grants from our international partners or donors. So in that situation, we are at a very big disadvantage. Our health system, like I saw in Mustafa's presentation, like the 4 point some percent of our budget accounts for the health budget in Afghanistan. And while the laws provide for free public health and free education, the budget is so small for the needs that very little is possible in that amount of the money that is available. So in the context of the COVID, I think we are sort of floating in a situation where nobody can guarantee any help almost to it, even to people who are the haves, leave alone the have-nots, because very little help is available. For the whole of Kabul, there is only one hospital that is assigned to provide care for COVID patients. Even they have, like our problems are not just money. Our problems are have many facets. We have political instability. We have conflict. We have lack of expertise and lack of people who know what to do, as well as we are very sorely under resourced. So we have many problems in Afghanistan. What can Afghanistan's government do? I think the first priority is for the peace negotiations to proceed much faster, so that without peace it is going to be very difficult, because nearly like more than 50% of our budget is allocated to is our defense budget, and that can only get lowered if there is relative peace, at least if it is not like it's not a country which is in constant combat or conflict. So that is one of the primary needs of Afghanistan is peace. We need to have peace before we can fix any of the other systems. We don't have any social protection mechanisms to talk about. Education and healthcare, or primary healthcare, at least basic healthcare, is supposed to be free, but our hospitals, even in Kabul, are very under-resourced. We have fewer doctors per capita, like for the number of population, and most of them are congregated in the urban centers. Rural areas have almost none. So our country is fighting on many fronts. It's not just the economy. The economy can only be revived with more peace and more stability. What so before they can, another big problem is the corruption issue in Afghanistan. Corruption is endemic in Afghanistan, in the government sector, in other sectors. So whatever little is available also gets sort of sponged off by people who have power or who have access to things, and other people are left on the dry. Naturally, women being one of the sectors of society who are the most vulnerable, or in this context, in the COVID-19 situation, where many of them who were in the informal, working in the informal sector, are left without jobs, without any payment. Women and daily wages mostly, they are suffering the most severely in Afghanistan as compared to, for instance, government and civil servants. Businesses are suffering a lot, and that will all impact the national economic growth for this year, and most likely for the next few years that come. So this is what the situation is like in Afghanistan, from what I see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Zulaika. You finish?
I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Zulaika. It is great to hear from you, because we haven't heard long time from Afghanistan. It is nice to be with you in this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
then now we'll come back. Maybe our friends will have some questions and then some queries.
Sure.
Come back later
Sure.
on. And then now I will go to Amali Veda Gedara from Sri Lanka. As I already introduced her, that she's widely working in the household debt, community debt in Sri Lanka. Amali, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I will be speaking about the Sri Lankan household debt, specifically low income household and lower and middle income household debt. And yeah, so to locate ourselves within the COVID context, so Sri Lanka, I mean, we don't have official statistics as to the job losses, but the government initiated the COVID economic relief package by the third stage. Have apparently reached some 6 million individuals. So there are, of course, double counting. And as for the job losses, you can make an estimate, like Sri Lanka has 4.7 million people in the informal sector, employed in the informal sector, and about 3 to 4 million in private sector. And the overall official labor force is accounted around 8 million out of the 21 million of the population. So, I mean, assuming that most of the people in the informal sector lost their jobs, at least like or over like 1 month lockdown and curfew, like across the country. So people must have like lost their jobs. And Sri Lanka, I mean, excessively depend on the external economy to finance the overall economy, like the tourism sector, the migrant labor, and government sector. So all these sectors are affected by COVID. And to start from public debt, because I mean, since the first speaker spoke about public where Sri Lanka stands now in terms of public debt. So yeah, Sri Lanka, I think, is identified as one of the risk countries in South Asia for public debt. And in this year, Sri Lanka has 3.2 billion US dollars in debt servicing for loans and interests. And yeah, Sri Lankan government has been lobbying for debt cancellation, more like for debt restructuring with bilateral and multilateral donors. But I think the problem will be with commercial borrowings from banks and in the bond market. Like, so I don't think there will be any leeway with that debt. And the problem doesn't stop in this year. The debt servicing increases for 2021 and 2023, apparently around 13.8 billion debt servicing in the coming years. So it will be extremely hard for Sri Lanka and Sri Lankans with the pandemic, economic consequences of the pandemic going to realize in the medium and the long term. We still don't have a clear idea how would be what would be the cumulative effect of the economic hit by the pandemic. So to go back to the household debt, Sri Lanka has, we talk about inequalities, so debt is an inherent part of social and economic gender inequalities in Sri Lanka as well. So I think it's a common factor. So if you look at the debt, household debt, you will see various these, there are of course a class dynamic in it, and dynamics as well as regional dynamics. Sri Lanka for the first time accounted household debt in and statistics accounted household debt in. Hello?
Yes, please. Go ahead. It is
Yeah,
okay.
all right. Yeah, okay. So seems my connection is a bit unstable.
No, that's fine.
For the first time,
okay.
Right. So for the first time, household debt was accounted the household expenditure survey in 2016. According to that, a disproportionate number of households in the plantation sector, like plantation meaning like tea and rubber, the plantation sector is affected by indebtedness. I think when you say indebtedness, this is heavy debt, right? And that same indicator for the rural sector is around 61.1 for fund among the households. And we know, like in Sri Lanka, if you talk about microfinance, there are about 2.48 million microfinance borrowers. I think most of them are insolvent, unable to pay, and almost 2.48 million are women. So there is a clear racial, regional, and gender disparity in Sri Lankan household debt. Most of the low-income households, microfinance. Now, Sri Lanka has been having this problem since about 2017 because of the predatory nature of lending and over-lending. There is a debt crisis in the microfinance sector, and we have had protests during the last couple of years, people demanding for deregulation. So the number of non-performing loans in the microfinance sector has gone. So the finance company is now the end of de-investing in microfinance credit and rerouting that money to micro insurance and micro leasing. So there is an increase in micro leasing in Sri Lanka. And there are, of course, gold loans like pawning. One of the pictures that appeared in media during first part of the lockdown was a lot of people gathered in front of pawn shops. So that is one data as to the kind of precarity among low-income households. Okay, I'll switch off my camera. Seems my connection is kind of unstable.
Okay, we are okay, but you can switch up because we have
right.
you have more 3-4 minutes still you have.
Oh, all right. Okay, sure.
Okay.
Right. So that was one incident which spoke to the nature of problem. And then there was another incident in Colombo where 3 women died in a stampede. to get some 1,000 rupees. So, I mean, it's extremely critical, and we are almost unaware of the problem we are talking about. Other important, I think, the development in terms of household debt again, but this is from, I think, lower or like middle class debt. There is a movement of people who are demanding for debt moratorium, specifically for bank loans and leasing. So they have mobilized people. One group say they have over 100,000, like almost 100,000 members, and they demand for a longer debt moratorium on like leasing. So it's very interesting how people respond and react to, and how I think this COVID has the kind of economic distresses caused by COVID has pushed people to take action against debt. If I talk about the solutions, so the Central Bank of Sri Lanka came up with a debt moratorium in late March, but it didn't. It actually addresses all forms of debt across the board, but it did not address finance. We don't know why they chose to exclude it. But the problem is, like, even within that debt moratorium, the banks and finance companies are not honoring it. So this debt moratorium is simply a direct central bank, which the banks and finance companies have to adopt. But the finance company, the bank, with this narrative that the debt moratorium is causing them problems and they're almost in the verge of collapse. So I think this is another bigger theme that emerged even in the microfinance companies. I saw one economist article which spoke to how the microfinance industry is in trouble now because the COVID distresses will increase the non-performing loan. So it is very interesting when people are talking about their own economic distresses from this kind of profiteering, businesses of profiteering from people's poverty. Now they are talking about what problems lending is creating for them. And Sri Lankan government also has...
You have 1 minute more, Amali.
All right, okay, sure. So I'm concluding. Sri Lankan government also introduced a 4% low interest rates for households for agricultural. Problem is most of the poor households are delisted because they have defaulted loans, so they won't be able to access these loans. So I think the Sri Lanka has a somewhat functioning cooperative system. So if these loans were diverted and distributed via the cooperatives, more people would be able to access this credit facility. I think as a solution, other important thing is to really take seriously the smallholder sector. Sri Lanka is a whole smallholder economy. Around 48.8% of the economic value contribution is coming from the smallholder sector. But if you really look at the budget expenditure, that sector is negligent, right? So I think in terms of when we think about economic recovery, getting ready for economic recovery in the medium and long term post-COVID, these are some of the important sectors that the government should pay attention to. So I will be concluding my presentation now. We can take up questions and discussion in the later. Thank you.
Thank you, Amali. Very insightful and practical experiences you have shared with us. Maybe our friends will come back to you later on. Now I will go to Bangladesh. Tofazil Monju, I would like to request to share what is happening in terms of all the development financing and loan in debt in Bangladesh. And then, as I already introduced, Tofazil Monju is a human rights activist in Bangladesh. Please, now up to you. Please unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is Tofajjal Hossein Monju from Bangladesh. I want to discuss over the topics, the debt burden and equality, and especially the focusing the the time of coronavirus crisis. Actually, what happened in Bangladesh during liberation, Bangladesh was a basket case, and all the international actors felt that Bangladesh could not run as a state because Bangladesh has a very poor resource. And so also there was a lot of political issue were there, but gradually Bangladesh proves its resilience all the way. Last 48 years, Bangladesh, all the fronts, poverty reductions and improving the social indicators, education, women empowerment, gender equality, access to different services. All the indicators shows Bangladesh are doing well. But last at least 5 years, Bangladesh are on in crossroad because Bangladesh first things, Bangladesh is a graduate from least development country to developing country, and Bangladesh current political leadership is dreamed to be a middle income country by 22 or 21. So lot of issue before coronavirus was on the table. How Bangladesh will move forward, and lot of political as well, economic management also as well as political issue was unsolved. First things, Bangladesh debt was never be so large. It's increased slowly, and Bangladesh debt composition was two way. One, previously it was external debt, but currently it is on domestic sources. When it was a external debt, then most of the debt was a grant, zero interest rate. So Bangladesh benefited from the foreign external debt once at the initial period, 20 or 30 years. But gradually when Bangladesh economy raises, Bangladesh became a more self-reliant in economic terms. But Bangladesh getting debt on interest rate from the multilateral donor like Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and on the other side, Bangladesh also borrowing from the bilateral donor recently China and previously Japan. So currently, 33% of GDP is Bangladesh debt, and so it is gradually increased. One of the reason the debt is increased over the mega project. Bangladesh is a popular mega project, means when the current ruling party took over the power, they took larger bridge. They took metropolitan larger project in different way. Even the nuclear fuel. So there is a large mega investment, and mega investment was not supported by the domestic saving. So government have to, or also Bangladesh government has a low earning, because Bangladesh government, the in terms of tax GDP ratio is the lowest in all South Asian country. It's only 8%, but India and even Pakistan is higher than Bangladesh. So Bangladesh government lacking resource for their ambitious project. So Bangladesh government go to the not only external donor, also Bangladesh government borrowing money from the bank, borrowing money from the public. They use different saving instrument and collecting money for the mega project. And in this way, before coronavirus, Bangladesh macroeconomic management became a quality of macroeconomics became a lower and problematic. But government ruling class has no political opposition, and they became the only party, no opposition. So they are giving the idea of the people that the economy will be growing on, so we have to borrow money for investment and developing the infrastructures. But what happened that the Bangladesh government also introduced the safety net, social protection, and it is a 16 social protection program on Bangladesh, and it covers 1/3 of mostly 50% of poor household. And it also contribute, the safety net also contribute the reducing the poverty level of Bangladesh. But mega project is a problem still now, because all the project, when initial planning was initial budget over the time became a double, triple. One of this region is this increase over the time of the different infrastructure project is a corruption or misgovernance of the fund. And
You
so
have 1 minute. You have 1 minute, Tofazil.
any question?
No. Please go ahead. You have 1 minute. Question later. Friends will come to questions. Now, 1 minute you have.
Oh, I have to finish by 1 minute.
Yes.
So I want to conclude that the coronavirus had the problem, and it's lockdown. It's an extraordinary thing for the economy, unpredictable, and government using their instrument, their law enforcement agency to shut down the economy. It is so, and shutdown of economy means not only means affect less the richer and middle class. It affect mainly the informal sector, who are daily wage laborer, who depend on the low income group. And gradually government bailout or government support is a very problematic. And though there are very positive things, government gives some support and through the digital way, and it also not free from the corruptions. So the final thing is, this is the corona created lot of challenge for government and for the country of Bangladesh. Bangladesh predicted projected the GDP growth will be less than at least 1%, where the before Corona it was a projected 8%. So there is a lot of crisis Bangladesh, and debt servicing is also deteriorate the economy without any international negotiation. If the debt servicing is not stopped, it will add more burden, and more burden will hamper the government support to the poorer, for the safety net and other things. So it needs
Thank
Bangladesh
you.
support from all the international actor for stopping or giving rescheduling the debt servicing, so that Bangladesh government could give the generous support to the poor. Poor can survive and poor can work for the coping the negative consequences of the coronavirus.
Thank you, Tafazil. Thank you very much. Thank you for very much sharing the Bangladesh situation. Now I go to Nalini Rattaraj. She is SAPE core committee members, and she will give us some what is called her experience and observation how this whole the indebtedness issue in the community has impacted women and children. Nalini, okay, you have also 5-7 minutes time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for Forum Asia and SAPE to organize this webinar. I'm going to see how this COVID-19 has increased or deepened and widened the inequality in Sri Lanka. Basically, all the other panelists explain how it is affecting our economy and other. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Hello.
Not yet. Only 5.
No, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can see, but you need to open the PowerPoint. You just see your folder.
Yes, folder. Yeah.
Ah, okay. No, I'm going to put my open. Okay. Now fine. Okay, let me go through, because I didn't on my camera. Okay, thank you. So first, here, can you see this picture? Can you see the screen? Hello?
Nalini, open the PowerPoint. It's not visible. We can see the folder. We can see your screen and the folder only.
If you open the presentation, then click on that page.
Now?
No.
What happened? Oh, I have done it earlier. Oh, time is going. Okay, now?
Yes,
Yes.
now it's okay.
Okay.
Go quickly,
Okay,
yeah.
now, yes,
Yeah,
quickly, I'll go.
It's okay, Nalini. It's okay.
Now
You
this picture I have, put Sri Lanka and a woman together to see whether what's a link between the poor rural women and Sri Lanka. So first of all, I will quickly go through some statistics, as Vimali already explained about a lot of statistics in Sri Lanka. It is 20 million population, female and male ratio 100 to 94, and 24.3% throughout the Sri Lanka headed by women because of the war and other reasons. 89,000 war widows only in north and east, and 20,000 female headed household, 20,000. In Jaffna only we get 80% of the total household are women. They are widows and who lost the husband or disappeared. And in politics, 5.3% in parliament, 4.1% in provincial council. And now, after bringing quota in 2017, we have 22% in local government. Women in ministerial post is 66.7%. And women contribution is very much high in Sri Lanka, as We are 52% in the population. At labor market, 38.2 women contribution, and we are the around 77% men are contributing the economy. And women midwives are 100% women, 90.2% nurses, and 71.2% are teachers, and healthcare workers also around 70% in Sri Lanka. Around 66% are informal sector workers, and 81 migrant women are housemaid who brings the highest foreign exchange in Sri Lanka. Next is tea, rubber, and rubber-based products. These are the women who are living in rural area, very much, in kind of poverty line, who brings the national economy to Sri Lanka. But what's happening with their life? And as Vimali explained, I don't want to go to the detail and statistics here. Who are these women? These women are from rural, mostly from northern eastern plantation sector, she explained also. And informal sector worker who sells product in the market, and street vendors, and fisher women, farmer women, small business people like having grocery owners and other livelihood activity they do, food items at home. And these group lost the income and livelihood by the COVID-19. And 2 months, almost 2 months, we had a curfew, and it came to stand because within few hours they announced they are going to impose the curfew in Sri Lanka, and they didn't have money. And the internal migrant people also, there are women who stuck in the housemates as in urban houses, and they couldn't go back, and they didn't have money in their hand. These women have to work 24 hours or 7 days wherever they were living. The microfinance companies are behind these women now. Now, these women, even though who are contributing the national economy, their families, they are the one who are acquiring these microfinance and micro credit loans. And now they can't pay because they don't have their livelihood, and they don't have their income by daily wages they were doing. No, now they lost the income, but microfinance companies come behind them during the curfew to pay back these weekly and monthly fees. And they are in most vulnerable situation right at the moment. Losing livelihood now, the further giving opportunity for microfinance company, where they will go back to them to get debt to sustain their life, because the compensation of 5,000 per family, the government gave only 1 month. 5,000 is not enough for a one family to live 1 week, but 5,000 for family of 6 or 7, in 1 month is not enough. Second payment they didn't give yet. So we can understand how the systematically these poor rural women, who are backbone of the national economy, losing their economic stability or livelihood or income through COVID-19. So we demand that debt should be cancelled, because as the other speaker announced, and we are raising voice for a long time for these micro credit companies. I think around 1,500 micro credit companies, only few micro credit companies only have registered themselves. So small farmers and fishers and plantation workers and small and medium entrepreneurs have to lead their economy towards recovery, because these are the backbone of the people and informal sector who are going to contribute to recovery of COVID-19 for Sri Lanka. Especially women, informal sector workers, migrant workers, tea plantation workers, and housemaids, even the garment factory people are working. These families and these people are going to be a part of the recovery, because women are the central force of recovery and source of national economy and foreign revenue. As well as we know, we have get the loan from IMF, World Bank, even China giving loan over and over again during the curfew time. A lot of money pumping in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka spent a huge proportion of its revenue to debt servicing. So in that situation, giving cancellizing the loan will be helpful for Sri Lanka, where they can, we hopefully they can transform that money for social security and compensating the small business and informal sector workers. And Sri Lanka also need a resource to fight against COVID-19 rather than reimbursing the international creditors.
Nalini, you have also almost finished the time. Okay. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm just over now. So pandemic is expected, we are expecting that could open the eyes of the rulers and policymakers to see this is a serious challenge we are facing. Demanding debt cancellation is necessary first step towards planning economic recovery of the country. And through this, we can reduce inequality a little bit even. This could contribute to reduce inequality. That's what I hope. So government and the central bank should ensure people are further pushed into accessing loans from lenders in the informal credit market. Society and community come together to fight against microcredit. We should demand cancellation. State should come up with a regulation on microfinance companies because there's no regulation, and state should have mechanism to monitor the microfinance companies, and there should be active movement against microcredit and the movement. And at last, conclusion, microfinance credit is not the women issue because everybody's thinking this is the women issue. It's not women issue, it's our issue. This is a national issue, deep in the inequality. So our country is borrowing at macro level and women are borrowing from macro level. I don't see different from both. That is big, this is small, but country also in a debt situation. It is like microfinance is rubbing the salt into the raw wound. It is started for the good reason, but it's going to the bad situation. I just want to read the Sustainable Development Goal 17 Target 4. It says, assist developing countries in attaining the long-term debt sustainability through coordinated policies aimed to fostering debt financing, debt relief, and debt restructuring as appropriate and address external debt of highly debted poor countries to reduce debt stress. This is for the global north to reduce or cancel our debt, which will link to women, which will help to women to get rid of their loans, and where women can contribute better to recovery of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Nalini. Very interesting because Sri Lanka has a women face. How you that link to all the indebtedness issues. No, it is very important to understand the dynamics of the debt. The domestic debt. Thank you. Now I would like to go to Sushovandar. Is the last speaker, but not the least. And then he, as I already introduced him, that he is the International Council member of the Committee of the Third World Debt Cancellations, and then also South Asia. It is South Asia head of that campaign, and also he is the core committee member of the SAPE. Sushovan.
Okay. Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks to SAPE and Forum Asia for giving us a chance to discuss these issues, which are always pertinent, but has become really very pertinent with the outbreak of COVID and the economic crisis that we are going through. Let me first say that the economic crisis is not due to the COVID outbreak, not due to the outbreak of the pandemic. It was already in the air since the last 1.5 decades, since 2007, the fall of Lehman Brothers, etc. COVID has actually triggered that fall very heavily. And there are different analysts saying that there are possibilities that we might have a similar situation, what happened in the end 1920s and early 30s, etc. Therefore, it's a common challenge for us to deal with the situation. I would like to make a link between the structural causes. And now we are seeing growth, very high growth of debt, both private illegitimate debt and also public debt. Number one, there's a fall of GDP of most of the South Asian countries. The June end figures will come. We'll have the quarter end June figures, and it's already evident, it's already indicated that instead of any growth, we will have a degrowth for the first time in recent years, in the last 2 decades or 3 decades, on a year-on-year basis, and also in absolute terms as compared to the last quarter. Number two, which means, when there's a fall of GDP, as Mustafa was explaining, this means that states will have much lower revenues to collect, to run for debt repayment, to run social programs, to run government machinery, etc. We will also have a fall in exports. Many of the South Asian countries are dependent on export, dependent on tourism, which is a form of export, form of way of earning foreign currency. So this will severely impair their revenue of earning foreign hard currency. We will also have a fall of remittances. Many countries in Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka are dependent on remittances to manage their balance of payment, to pay for the imports and also for the debt repayment. There'll also be sort of money pulling out of South Asia. We have already seen hot money pulling out of the region, and we will see a fall in investments, fall in overseas investments. So all this means that the currencies of South Asia will have huge devaluation. If you look at the 1-year graph of most of the South Asian currencies, I think all of the South Asian currencies, it has depreciated, devalued vis-a-vis the US dollar or the euro or the Japanese yen, which means that debt repayment in dollar terms or in euro terms or any other hard currency will have even more difficulty. Even a large part of the revenue, domestic revenue that you collect, will go out to repay the debt. And we will have also another factor, that's a rise in corporate debt. The rise in corporate debt, especially in the case of India, corporations are not earning enough to pay for their interests, even the interest to the bank, and which has led to a huge banking crisis in India. And I'm sure that this will be a similar situation around in different other South Asian countries on a different scale. It depends on their whole exposure, the level of the corporates, the level of the borrowings, and the level of the banking system. But this will be the impacts. And as already evident that governments will try to bail out these private corporations, which means putting even more pressure on the banks, even more pressure on the public coffers. So all this is going to, no doubt, hugely exacerbate the debt crisis. And faced with the COVID situation, faced with the frailing, years and years of imposition of neoliberal offensive, which is basically an offensive of capital against labor, we will have which has led to a deterioration of all sorts of public services. And far away from building our public services, states will have to dedicate more resources for the repayment of debt, which implies that public services, instead of improving, for example, the health system, for example, your education system, instead of improving, will even go worse. Now, we also have seen a rise in private illegitimate debt in the region. And this is going to increase. And the coronavirus is going to play a direct role in it. As Amali has already highlighted, that a lot of women are in default in Sri Lanka. Nalini has also said so. If you see the huge level of microfinance loans. Now, microfinance is I'm very clear on this, that this was never an initiative to save the poor people or the poor women out of poverty. It was a fresh initiative by capital to exploit the most vulnerable in the society. And if you look at the horrible interest rate, it's very clear, it's very evident that it has not ushered in a new development. It's not liberated women, rather shackled them to even more chains, to even more poverty, deprivation. If you look at the whole set of debt, for example, of the farmers' debt in India, and more than 300,000 farmers suicide over the last 3 decades. I mean, it's evident that this is a system which has exposed people to brutality, leading to their pauperization, deprivation, misery, and various things. We also have a growing household debt. We have the debt of brick kiln workers. I mean, I know one of our comrades, Farooq Tariq, was campaigning on it, the debt of brick kiln workers. So now this is going to increase. People are already at default. This is going to severely. And as our other speakers, panelists have said, that not everything is measurable, since many of the loans are taken from informal sources, which has no proper real accounting by state authorities. Now, the public illegitimate debt and the private illegitimate debt are not unconnected issues. It's very, very, very connected issues. States started contracting huge loans, which led to an increase in public debt in the years of 80s and 90s and 2000 and even before. Now, due to the debt repayment, due to the repayment of the debt, a large part of our revenues, large part of the budget was dedicated to it. Now, this led to the states to walk away from providing whatever meager social protection measures we had in the region. Instead, people were left vulnerable to fend for themselves and to borrow. So there's a connection, there's an obvious connection, a very strong connection between private illegitimate debt and public illegitimate debt. Now, the issue is that with the multidimensional crisis that capitalism is facing today, the situation is going to be very hard for people, and we really need to have a strong resistance against it, because not only the situation of debt will go, the states will increasingly apply harder austerity measures. Now, we have already seen in India that there has been doing away with labor laws. A number of labor laws are being done away. Many of the Chamber of Commerces have said that to do away with trade union rights, a very hard-fought right of the working class for more than a century. It's a very hard-fought right. To do away with the trade union rights for at least a couple of years or 3 years. Now, a number of governments in India have already started the suspension of very, very essential part of the labor rights. And this, they say that it's very important to build the economy, in times of the crisis and etc. That's not the fact. Well, on one hand, we see that lavishly money is spent by the central banks. In India, the Reserve Bank of India is pumping heavy money into the market, liquidity into the market, to boost the falling share markets. On the other hand, you see that in order to help the capitalists to maintain their rate of profits, the states are trying to give them a number of privilege. We'll see many of them coming soon in terms of a number of concessions or subsidies and many other things. And it started with the horrific form that with the suspension of labor laws. We will also see more and more authoritarian regime coming in the region to curb public dissent. All this is linked up. It's not separated from the politics. It's not separated from the economics. Rather, politics precedes economics, and the economic policies are a result of the political policies, political directions, and the political ideologies. Now, what we need to do is the very important call of this hour to actually have a united fight against it, united fight in the countries, in the region, and also to build a global solidarity against all this attempt by the ruling classes to build a strong struggle against debt, to build a strong struggle against many of the austerity that will be imposed on us, including neglecting the climate, including attacks on women, and various other things. In fact, what we need at this point of time is a public space for us to discuss, for us to meet, for us to discuss, for us to share common issues, for us to share common challenges, and to raise our voices. Unfortunately, what existed in South Asia for quite some time, a successful model of people's mobilization, which was People's SARC, was suspended since 2014 because the government of India has actually, since the fascists are in power, they've actually tried to sabotage the SARC process. SARC is South Asian Association for Regional. Basically, this was not, while they officially say that, they take various excuses of Pakistan and etc., but I really feel that this was an attempt to curb our democratic spaces, because very hard right-wing policies are going to follow that. So they wanted to limit the democratic spaces. So we need, as a citizens movement, as a working class movement, and many other things, we need to re-establish our common spaces. We need to re-establish the People's Sarc, or the space of People's Sarc, the democratic space of People's Sarc, where civil society could come and take forward. And I'm sure that SAPE, which has played a role in the past in bringing South Asian citizens together so successfully, must take this lead once again and discuss various issues, including debt and attack on various sections of the population, attack on the workers, attack on women, attack on other things. So these are issues that we need to to build a very stronger anti-debt movement, a global movement against anti-debt, against debt, against austerity, and to challenge the lenders. Because lenders at this point of time, I just want to finally say and finish off with that, the lenders are playing a very nasty role in this times of crisis. As Mustafa has explained, that they are not interested in debt cancellation. In fact, they're contracting new debts. They're contracting new debts so that the IMF is repaid, and so that their money is safe for the time being. But this will have a very, very, very strong impact in the days to come. And we need a new movement, a fresh to take these challenges up. Thank you, and I'm open to questions from you.
Thank you, Sushavan. Thank you. You just okay. You recall the people's platform, politics. The people saw somehow, how we all the people come together. Thank you very much for your very comprehensive and then the very linked presentation. Now I open the floor for discussion. Maybe we will have the more half an hour discussion, and then very brief 1 to 2 minutes response from panelists. If the respective panelists, the issues or questions, they need to respond. If you don't have any issues and then questions, etc., you don't need to respond. So I would like to open this, and then friends can raise your hand or whatever, or you can speak. If you go to your right side, and then there is somewhere, if you see in your screen, you see the raise hand. So if you do that, and then I will keep you on the queue, and then let you to speak. Thank you very much. Okay, the floor is yours. Farooq, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to say something. If you hear me now.
Yes, very excellent, Farooq. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it was very good to hear my old friends and comrades on the issue of debt. Importantly, in Pakistan, there is also a campaign by women to cancel the debt, these small debts with a very high rate of interest. The demonstrations has taken place in Faisalabad and also in my hometown Toba Tek Singh. Women are demanding that these small loan banks should not come to their homes because of the lockdown. They are unable to pay anything at present time. So initially they are demanding no debt collection for the next 6 months. But we say cancel all these debts. On the wider scale, Pakistan just paid last week $1.7 billion to foreign debt, a criminal act at this time to do it, because when doctors don't have even the protection kits, and there is an absolute rise of coronavirus in Pakistan, 5,000 every day, and there are no test facilities available. The present finance minister and governor of State Bank, both who were employed by IMF and World Bank earlier than before these jobs, has paid the foreign debt even at this crucial time. We raised it, but there is no one listening at present time. So we demand Pakistan should not pay anything at present time. They should just refuse to pay, and because there is no way that Pakistani government could survive paying the debt and also saving the people from hunger. We need to save people from hunger. It's a severe capitalist crisis, and this will go further. But one of the way they can avoid for the time being or reduce the intensity of the crisis is to stop paying debts. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharatji. Thank you very much. And then nice to hear from you. And then other friends, would you like to, some other friends? Floor is yours. Saeed, please. Saeed Baloch, I think he's from Karachi. Yes?
Netra, I will leave in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Mustafa, I have another call. So
Okay,
just wanted to mention,
okay.
yeah.
So right. And then if friends, okay, have some questions to you, please put some. If you want to ask some questions to Mustafa ji, Saeed, please.
Yes. Are you listening me?
Yes.
Yes. First, thanks Mustafa and other presenter. They are present very good and elaborate our economic situation. So then it's not a big question, but question is that Thailand reduce its military expenditure around $138 million because of pandemic. They want to spend all money to the people services. So what about the SAARC countries? SAARC countries is a huge buyer of ammunition from developed countries. So can we demand our SAARC region to just not only stop and reduce your military budget, then start campaign and country level to cancellation all debt, and then save all debt services money and military budgets money to divert people's services like health, education, because as Farooq Tariq told, we badly need the medical kits, medical services, hospitals, equipment. So I think it's not only issue of Pakistan, but it's all poor countries around the world. But South Asia is the main region of poor peoples. Thanks.
Thank you, sir, Said. I have not seen any hand raised, so I would like to request Mustafa, if you are listening other presenters and also a few comments from the participants, our fellow participants. Will you have something to say, some remarks or something?
No, thank you, Netra. I think I'm really amazed to see, especially the presentation from Sri Lanka. That's a real-time experience that how women are being affected. And I would propose really it will be great if SAPE using its network can collect these stories, and if people allow with the pictures, not too lengthy document, but if we can have a short, brief internal document to see how COVID is impacting overall population, informal workers, among whom the majority is women. And I think that will help in our date campaign, if we want to launch it, to really have a real-time people's stories promoted. And if there's a video clips, that will be more great, that how these women under indebtedness are feeling to feed their children and buy daily necessities. So that will be really inspiring, even in the global level, date campaign people to see. And similarly, as Farooq also mentioned, if we can have this, a very brief description written that how women are resisting in Pakistan to pay the debt. There was one question from Zia. I already responded that when governments are spending more money during the COVID, how that's going to increase the inequality. So I think the magnitude of the crisis and the damage that it has done to the economy, to the wages, employment, and the businesses is that huge, and it has implications over the years to millions of the people in South Asia. So it's not that few thousands that governments are really distributing are going to help. that is hardly enough to buy the food for a month or two. While people, and there is a doubt that many million more people, so the gains in poverty reduction that achieved in last 20-30 years in Asia are going to be cancelled by this this one pandemic, and many more people will fall into the poverty. But more than that also, so see, if the whole year of schooling is gone for the children, and maybe rich children can access from their laptops and others for the online classes, but what about public sector poor schools? So that is going to widen further the education inequalities, the health inequalities, and really diminish the chance of social mobility, that poor people could have escaped poverty and improve their living standards. So this crisis will not only increase poverty, but also increase the inequality. And I think this is very critical moment for the governments to support their people, not to the pay debt. Even if they take the sovereign decision that they want to support their people. And there is a threat. There is a threat from global credit rating agencies, from the donors, from private lenders. So if these countries will do that or even get benefit from G20, a legitimate decision, they are being threatened individually, their credit rating will go down. And in the future, they can't access the credit in the market. So there is a lot of pressure. But if citizens and people keep the struggle continue, and if we join from South Asia to these global efforts, we might have a chance to win this battle. Thank you, Netra, and all the colleagues. I will leave now. I have another call in 5 minutes, but it was wonderful to reconnect and talk with all the colleagues in South Asia. And thank you very much again.
Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you, Mustafa. It is great time having you in this forum, and then we will see you again sometimes again. Thank you very much, and have a nice time.
Thank you, and bye.
Okay, thank you. And then we have one hand raised. Please, Sankha Biswas, please. Can you unmute, Sankha? Okay.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to the SAPA for organizing this webinar, and I'm very fascinating about this. But my question is specifically to the Shushavandhar, that he spoke about the foreign trading. I want him to I want to ask him that in South Asian countries like India, Sri Lanka, and other countries, how this is going to affect this pandemic lockdown, how this is going to affect this foreign trading, and how this is going to affect the life of the people from this third world country. And my second question is that the IMF and the Asian Development Bank already they already published their regulation that they are going to give loans, cheap loans, to the third world countries. So what is your what is your comment on this? Please, would you like to elaborate these decisions in your terms, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Sankha. Thank you, Sankha. Susoman, since there is no hand raised, Susoman, can you respond that, and then we come back to other speaker? Yeah.
Okay. Just a quick response. Number one, the impact on foreign trade, as I explained, that exports are going to go down. It's already going down. Many of the countries are dependent on exports. For example, if you look at not only material export of manufactured products, but you look at tourism, how it's going to affect Sri Lanka and Nepal. I mean, Nepal is very much dependent on tourism for foreign revenue. So this is going to take a hit. Now, less of, when countries are able to export less, they're able to earn less foreign currencies, less hard currencies. And most of the debt are going to be paid in hard currencies. So that's going to impact them heavily. Now, with less of remittances, less of trade, less of withdrawal of investments or withdrawal of hot money, the institution
Susovan, it is my Susovan is paused or it is mine one? No.
It's frozen for some reason.
Just Susovan, yeah?
Yes, it seems that Susovan lost.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay. So we come back later on. Zulaika, I would like to go to the panelists now. Zulaika, would you like to reflect something after the hearing other panelists and some comments from the floor?
You're addressing me?
Yeah. If you have something to add, otherwise it is okay. If you have,
Yeah, the connection was gone. I'm sorry, the connection.
Okay. Yeah.
Just-
Susovan, you continue finish, then I come to
Just let me finish very quickly, briefly. What we need is debt cancellation. No more new loans. No soft loan, hard loan, or any type of loan, brown loan, black loan, or white loan. We need a debt cancellation. South Asian countries have paid many more times than they have owed. I mean, I don't want to take too long, but there's a history of colonialism where, money was plundered from the region like anything. So we have paid much more than what was necessary to do. We continue to pay so because not only the lenders, but our ruling elites benefits from it. And this is precisely the point that we need to raise. No more loans. Debt cancellation is the first point. And then there can be discussions or negotiations about how we have money for development, in what form, for what development, not for building, white elephants, giant infrastructure projects, not for building this high-speed bullet train corridors, or not for building huge bridges, not for building huge dams, which also otherwise, destroys the ecology, destroys people of their livelihoods, evict people. So this is the first thing that I want to say. And no legitimizing the IMF and all these lenders, or even the Chinese lenders, but the AIIB. No, nothing doing that. We must also raise the questions of the odious loans, of which there are a number of instances in South Asia. The whole Nepalese loan under the monarchy, the loans contracted by the governments of Pakistan and Bangladesh under the military dictatorships, under executive presidency of Sri Lanka, all these sorts of loans, the monarchy of Bhutan, or the loans, the war ravaged Afghanistan. These are very clear-cut examples of odious loans. If you look at it, that's why we need a citizens' audit of the debt. We need a citizens' audit of the debt to ascertain that part of odious debt, and we must be bold enough to say that we will not pay any of them. We will not pay any of them, and we need a cancellation, immediate cancellation of the debt, and we need to force our governments to repudiate the debt. This is a call of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Susovan. Zulaika, would you like to say something? Yes, please.
Okay, I would just like to say that in Afghanistan, while the debt compared to the other South Asian countries might be smaller, the very fact that we are dependent so heavily on foreign assistance, which comes in so-called grants, even that is a debt in another form. If it is not like it is, it gives other powers, international powers, more clout in our internal and in our foreign policies and in whatever happens in the country. So that so-called assistance is not really humanitarian assistance. It gives other countries, like it impairs the sovereignty of the country, and so I think Afghanistan's problems are not just debt, it is more than that. It is, and our economy is going to be affected by, it is being very sorely affected by the aid also that we are receiving.
Thank you, Zulaika. And then Amali, will you have something to add in the discussion?
Yeah, thank you. So I think in Sri Lanka's case as well, I mean, yeah, we do campaign for debt cancellation, and we do emphasize on the importance of government seriously lobbying for debt restructuring and with bilateral and multilateral donors. But I don't know, like when I really look at like the situation where we are now with the economy getting a massive hit by its excessive dependence on the external economy, I fear that Sri Lanka will be going for more odious loans and unequal agreements. One I have in mind at the moment is the Millennium Challenge Compact agreement it's a donor grant proposed by the United States of $480 million. So there has been huge protests from farmers, from women against this agreement, but I feel like in the coming months this will go through, given the situation where we are now. I think as disappointing or sad the situation is, I think the COVID-induced crisis has also given away hopes where, as I previously mentioned, people have come to understand the difficult or how the finance and the finance companies and banks work, and they have come to resist and react to these loans and other forms of debt instruments that they have taken. So hopefully these movements will take momentum and expand and mobilize people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amali. Thank you. A very nice reflection. Now, I would like to request Tofazil Monju from Bangladesh. Would you like to add something? Tofazil, would you like to add something?
Yes, I want to.
Please, please.
I'm saying something.
Very short, very brief, please.
You are warning me before saying anything. So I'm saying two things.
Yes.
One is a cancellation of the debt is a decision by the lot of actors. From internally, it is some private bank, also from government, and from government side, it is a depend on their donors, the multilateral World Bank, Asia. So if you want to claim the cancellation of debt burden, we have to raise voice in different spaces, and so we have to make a proposal or a strategy how we raise voice of the cancellation of the debt. Second thing is, we want to not only cancellation of the debt, we also want to get a grant support to overcome the crisis. So these two are complementary. One side we are cancellation because when there is some crisis, we know the debt burden, we have no income, but we have a debt burden. So it makes us a suicidal condition. So one side we want to get a debt cancellation, other side we also get grant support to launch my economic activity to recover from this extraordinary situation and crisis from COVID-19. Because without grant support, if debt cancellation also took place, we cannot free from the poverty and other crises. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, Nalini. Nalini, would you like to add something?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for everyone. And what I could see is this is a phenomenon situation in South Asia. As I said earlier, this debt situation and microfinance in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh especially. So we got to fight together. Thank you for this session. But we have to get organized well. Even though Amali said, we are fighting for debt cancellation. But I don't see the awareness in the grassroots level, in the middle class about the seriousness of or in-depth knowledge about why we should demand for cancellation. Because all were trapped into this, development picture. We need development. They think the indicators of development is buildings, bridges, and railway track, and harbors, and airports. So we need to bring awareness among ordinary people to fight against it with us, because this is not affecting a group of people. It's as a whole, the country debt situation is affecting the whole people, because we are paying for each and every rice we are eating, the taxes paying on it. So we have to come together to fight for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nalini. Okay, we come to towards the end, and then this is very interesting. I would like to, I have two observations, and then I would like to hand over to Devendra Adhikari. He is the regional South Asia regional program manager of the Forum Asia. He will conclude saying, okay, reflecting some what is called his thought and some discussion, the points he captured from the discussion. But I have this is the SAPE and Forum Asia would like to create, okay, a platform in a difficult time, so that we bring friends, okay, like-minded friends together, and bring the solidarity to exchange our ideas, experiences, and keep momentum. This is the one objective that, and then this is the first time that at the SAPE we have been discussing in the length and breadth of the debt issues, okay, within the SAPE, and then uniting all the countries of the South Asia, and also bringing organization and friend from Southeast Asia, East Asia. So it is that in the future we keep momentum with some campaign. We develop the campaign. Let us think about that, how we can do. We have circulated and a statement 2 days before, and then if you have not seen, and then again our secretariat from SAPE, they will circulate, and then you endorse that, be part of that, okay, this webinar, and that statement is a kind of the coming together. So that is the second message that I wanted to bring here. And thank you very much for all your supports, and then deliberation, action, deliberation. Now I would like to hand over to conclude this session from Devendra Adhikari, the South Asia manager of Forum Asia. Devendra, over to you, and then you conclude and you close.
Thank you, Netradai, for your wonderful moderations of this webinar. And thank you to all the speakers, discussants, and the attendees of this webinar. And I would like to acknowledge to all the speakers and discussants, and even the participants. Then I was unable to hear all the, your most important, the voices, most important logic during this period due to some, technical glitch in my area. However, what I found that after the COVID-19, the pandemic, we have, the tremendous problems we are facing in South Asia. However, we know that we have already, there's so many problems in South Asia. And we try to overcome from the poverty, we try to overcome from the inequality, and we fight against some capitalist, that type of, the economic structure in South Asia. But after the COVID-19 pandemic, what we found that we had emerged new health problem in South Asia, we have new economic crisis in South Asia, and we have new social problem in South Asia we are currently facing. So in this webinar, the hearing the voice of the speakers and discussant, and even the participant, what I found that we are unable to pay the loan. We are unable to refund the loan. I mean, that type of debt which is imposed by the IMF or World Bank in the South Asia. So it is the first demand. It is our the strong demands to the IMF and World Bank and others financial institution that it would better, and we claim that not better. You must they cancel all the illegitimate debt for the South Asian country. That might be, that is the, the ODA or other things as well. That might be goes to the government or other, the private sector as well. Sure, we are facing, the enormous challenges to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, and it will have more problematic in post-pandemic situations. We felt on that. Sure, what we think that after this, the pandemic in South Asia, our poverty might be double, our vulnerability might be double, and insecurity situation will also be double in our, the South Asia. So we are more vulnerable, and this pandemic, that pushes our millions of people into poverty, and our human rights situations will be, critical in this situation. So, so that is, the so multiple reasons we have, because we have also, the lost, the remittance in the South Asia, and we have also, the low financial investment during this period. So it invites the crisis economic crisis in South Asia, that most of our panelists and the discussions has focused on that. So I think we know that the South Asia itself was already one of the poorest regions. So it is clear that South Asia will have a disproportionate share of COVID-19 pandemic impact. So for millions of our workers that work in formal and informal sector, we have no income, we have no food, we have no security. So that means we have no future. So that the financial institutions must, they cancels our debt in the South Asia. So if you look at the situation of Sri Lanka, and if you look at the situations of Pakistan, we know debt to the GDP and also the debt to the revenue ratio is high in Sri Lanka and Pakistan. So in similar type of situation we have in other South Asian countries. So we strongly, demand to those countries to cancel the debt. And if the present debt burden is not relaxed for us, the countries in this region will be more vulnerable and trapped in the crisis. So we, again, based on our, the panelists and the discussion, I can say that any effective fight against the COVID-19 pandemic or huge resources, we need more money to overcome from this crisis, from this health crisis, from this economic crisis, from this, the social crisis. So the limited resources of South Asian countries should be devoted to fight the pandemic rather than reimbursing in the international creditors. We are unable to do that. So under these circumstances, we demand the cancellation of all illegitimate debt of the South Asian. In this country, I just would like to highlight one, the expert person, Joseph, that clearly said that lending money to a starving woman to buy food when she has no capacity to repay does not create a legitimate debt. So if you quote this Joseph, the person, then we can easily say that we are unable to pay the debt. We are not in that condition to pay the debt. So we again demand to that financial institution to cancel the debts for the South Asian countries, either that goes to directly to the government or other, the private institution, to ensure the rights of the poor people, to ensure the right of bottom poor peoples in South Asia. So that is my, a kind of, the reflections of this webinar. So I would like to, having shared this, I would like to conclude this webinar, and thank you for the panelists, thank you for the discussant, and thank you for the attendees of this program. We will have another, the webinars on 17th June. I hope you will also join on that and contribute from your side. Thank you all for your wonderful presentation and your thought in this webinar. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you too, Devendra.
Yeah, bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Helen, could you conclude on that? Off on that?
Bye-bye. Thank you.
I will close the webinar now, yeah? So
ending the session.
Everybody comes to the micro on the camera and we can take the picture together. Raman?
Oh,
Ilan,
okay.
wait for a while.
Yeah, let's do that.
Netra?
Yeah, it seems that Netra is yeah already
Reshma?
connected. So I will take the screen